Welcome back to the Metal Gear The Complete Story bonus chapters. Today we're going to explain Gray Fox and the Cyborg Ninja project a tad better for everyone who still had questions. Today's question is, who else would you like to see more information on next? Dead Cell, Foxhound, Solidus, Raiden, or perhaps more information on the boss and the Sorrow? Today's going to be a smaller disclaimer than usual. All information gathered today is from our first-hand experiences in the games and from the Metal Gear Wiki. And I'm going to let you guys know right now, there are a few foreign countries in this whole entire thing, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce them properly. So I'm going to give it my best shot. Alright, here we go. Gray Fox is also known as Frank Jaeger. He began his career fighting and killing as a child soldier in the Mozambican War of Independence. Known for his cruel war tactics, he would trick his enemies into letting their guard down by acting with the frankness of a young child. This earned him the title of Frank Hunter, which eventually evolved into Frank Jaeger from the little German that he knew. In 1966, a young Frank met with Big Boss, who stopped him while he was in battle. Big Boss sent Frank to a rehabilitation center, believing that he had just saved the child and this was the end of his child soldier career. What Big Boss didn't know is that the CIA went to that actual facility to recruit the child soldier due to his reputation. He was placed into the Perfect Soldier project and it turned him into a more efficient soldier, able to kill his targets without remorse. While he wasn't in combat, he would be kept in a sensory deprivation tank, which would basically reset his memories. It was due to this training that his reflexes and his abilities became enhanced, allowing him to deflect bullets and perform insanely agile attacks. At the end of the CIA Perfect Soldier testing, Frank was the only survivor. He took the codename Null and moved forward with his career. The next segment takes place during Portable Ops. While a good portion of Portable Ops can be considered canon, it is also not considered canon at the same time, since it actually wasn't created by Hideo, the creator of the series. Just like the main video series, where we brought Gene into the overall plot, you can take this segment as you want it, as canon or not as canon. The next time he popped up into history, it was as Null, and he worked as a member of Fox during the rebellion that took place during Portable Ops. He was repeatedly defeated by Big Boss, and the fact that he couldn't defeat Big Boss haunted him. No matter how many times he went into a sensory deprivation tank, he couldn't erase the memories of Big Boss's fighting styles. During their final fight, Big Boss realized who Null really was and refrained from killing him. He told Null to seek refuge outside of the Fox unit and sent him to a hospital. While this may have been the end of our tortured soul known as Frank Jaeger, his role was not yet complete. Twice now, Big Boss has saved him and redeemed him, only for the US government to take him into another project. You see, while he was resting in the hospital, Major Zero heard of the incredible Perfect Soldier project and directed Ocelot to request Frank Jaeger's assistance. Now we're back into the confirmed canon. The next time that he pops up, Big Boss once again saves him. Frank got himself captured and was forced into a forced labor camp. Being rescued once again by Big Boss has brought a level of admiration to Big Boss that could almost never be removed. In 1979, Frank killed two parents of a young girl during a civil war. The girl's name was Naomi Hunter, and feeling an immense amount of guilt for leaving the girl to die, he gave her his rations and chose to adopt her. Later, a military analyst would speculate that these actions were the result of post-traumatic stress resulting from his own childhood as a child soldier. While the fact that he killed her parents would haunt him forever, he chose to keep this fact a secret from Naomi. During this civil war, Frank would continue his fighting, which would ultimately result in him being severely tortured, and ultimately him losing his nose and his ears. He would have been killed if it wasn't for another rescue by Big Boss. Big Boss then sent Frank and Naomi to America, but back in 1988, both Frank and Big Boss would go back to Africa, leaving the young girl to fend for herself back in the States. Frank was going by the alias Frank Hunter at this time and fell in love with a Chet figure skating champion. They tried to elope, but the American authorities refused to allow her asylum and sent her back to the Chet. Due to the fact that she was trying to flee her country, they stripped her of her competition rights. It was due to the treatment of her that Frank began to resent the American government. In the early 1990s, Frank went back to work for Special Forces and rejoined Foxhound. Big Boss was in charge of the unit at this time, and he thought that this was an amazing time for him to work with Big Boss directly. But as we know, Big Boss actually did this so that he could watch the American government from the inside and be in charge of one of the most elite Special Forces units, just so he could see them fail. It was in 1995 that the Outer Heaven situation was brewing, and the US government received word that the Army in Outer Heaven was attempting to rebuild a Metal Gear. Frank Yeager, now going by the codename Gray Fox, was sent in to gather data and see if these rumors were actually true. His mission was ultimately a failure though, with him being captured, and the only message that he was able to send back was Metal Gear. With the words Metal Gear being sent back to the US, they had Big Boss send in a second agent to confirm the situation and rescue Gray Fox. The second agent that they send in is Solid Snake, and he finds out that Big Boss is behind the entire thing, and he manages to stop the entire Metal Gear situation. Both Gray Fox and Big Boss flee from the island. While Gray Fox didn't know that Big Boss was in charge when he initially went in, he has so much respect for the man that he left with Big Boss to go for his new goals. The next time that Gray Fox popped up on the radar, he was assisting Big Boss in trying to take control of the synthetic oil from Zanzibar land. Here is where things took a turn for the worst for him. As he was defending Big Boss from Solid Snake, and during their fights, he ends up being badly beaten and injured. At the end of the entire Zanzibar land mission, Gray Fox finds himself blown up by a landmine and officially killed in action. A man who led a sad history and was forced into terrible situations, he finally meets his end working for Big Boss in an attempt to gain controlling factor in the war against the Patriots. But was this really the end for our perfect soldier? No, his body was recovered by the Patriots and testing on him continued. He became the guinea pig for the Foxhound's gene therapy techniques and had a powered exoskeleton grafted to his body. They tested nanotechnology and various drugs to continue the testing on him. In the end, he was an imperfect cyborg ninja soldier. Being the first of his kind, he was having some problems with his nerve connections, which caused him to have random bouts of extreme pain. Years passed and the testing on him continued until Naomi Hunter, who had been searching for her adopted brother/father figure, finally found where he was being kept. She freed him and falsified reports of his death during an accident. From this point on, he went into hiding, but the entire ordeal left him highly unstable, and his own identity was slipping away. As the years passed, his desire to get revenge on Solid Snake grew, and the urge to end their conflict became so intense that he went to meet Snake at the Shadow Moses incident in 2005. He used a full-body optic camo to move quietly through Shadow Moses until he finally found Solid Snake fighting with Revolver Ocelot. To ensure that he would be the one to kill Solid Snake, Gray Fox severed Revolver Ocelot's hand in a move that would set in motion a series of hand transplants and gene therapy for Revolver Ocelot. But if you want to know more about that, go check out our Ocelot bonus video. Gray Fox was about to fight Solid Snake when he received an immense amount of pain from his imperfect nerve connections. He quickly fled, intending to meet up with Solid Snake again later. While he was dealing with the pain, he decided to assist Solid Snake through the facility to ensure his survival, and ensure that it would be Gray Fox who gets to finish him off. He takes the alias of Deep Throat and begins to feed information to Snake through his earpiece. Once he finally got a shot at Solid Snake, he confronted him, and they had their first fight. They fought until it looked like Gray Fox would prevail, but the imperfect nerve connections once again took him out of the fight. He got hit with such an immense amount of pain that he was forced into retreating once again and forfeiting his win over Solid Snake. Solid Snake continued into the facility until he came against Liquid Snake in the Metal Gear Rex. Determined to be the only one to kill Solid Snake, Gray Fox intervened once again. But this time, one Cyborg Ninja was not enough to take down a Metal Gear. He fought violently, saving Solid Snake's life, and then he sacrificed his own to ensure that Solid Snake would win against the Metal Gear. In his final moments, he revealed to Snake his role in Naomi's parents' deaths, and begged for Snake to tell her the truth. With that, all Snake needed to do was send a Stinger missile off and finish Metal Gear off, but killing Gray Fox in the process. But because he didn't want to finish Gray Fox, Snake hesitated. Gray Fox told him, however, Ever since he had been taken from Zanzibar Island, he has neither been dead nor alive, and that he can finally meet his end with Snake witnessing it. Gray Fox's body fell to the ground and Liquid began to stomp on it with Metal Gear Rex, hoping to outright crush him. In his final moments of his second life, Gray Fox looks at Snake and says, "We are not tools of the government or anyone else. Fighting was the only thing I was good at. But at least I've always fought for what I believed in. Snake, farewell." As we all know, Solid Snake would go on to finish his mission in Shadow Moses, but Gray Fox was no more. Naomi Hunter found out the truth about Gray Fox and regretted taking her vengeance out on Snake for it. She would go on to assist Snake in the final missions of this saga. As for Gray Fox, he was finally laid to rest. Solid Snake did contact Naomi after the events of Shadow Moses, and he chose not to ruin the image of Gray Fox for her. He told her that his last message was to forget about him and move on with her life, and that he always would love her. Regardless of the fact of what he wanted her to know, Solid Snake decided not to ruin the image of the only family she ever knew. Frank Yeager, or Gray Fox, or whichever you prefer, is a man who was tortured by his own fate for his entire life. In the end, he leaned more towards being a villain in the series, but he redeemed himself in the very end by saving Solid Snake and wanting Naomi to know the truth. Being one of the more popular characters in this series, he also gets mentions and Easter eggs in most of the other Metal Gear games. What is your take on Gray Fox? Did you even know that the Cyborg Ninja you remember from Metal Gear Solid 1 had such a crazy history within the series? He's personally one of my favorite characters because of his admiration for Big Boss. I think I would have done anything for that man myself. Also, what are your opinions? Do you think he's going to show up in the Phantom Pain, the new Metal Gear Solid 5 game? Don't forget to follow our other complete story series with Resident Evil, Kingdom Hearts, Zelda, Bioshock, and whatever else we create. We also act out characters in video games, creating some rather funny comedies. At least that's what the comments say they are. Also, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and subscribe to the channel to get all the latest from Eligible Monster. Now it's time for me to go play some more Metal Gear games and learn more about your favorite characters. Request your next bonus episode down below.